conniving morning. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that we want. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. This is all the money that we want.
I said money, neighbor,
money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. I don't want you conniving money.
Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. It's one set of people getting aisle money. It's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, with Jah as ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, they got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice. I And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
If you're looking for sweetness to put inside a basket, I am the whole blinking market.
Come get your Christmas bargains at the Buxton Christmas Market and Business Expo on Friday, December 20th from 14 hours and all day Saturday, December 21st. Church of God Road, opposite Tipperary Hall. The Buxton Christmas Market and Small Business Expo. Vendors 682-7981 for registration. It's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday with Al Christie and popular DJs at Club Twilight, Sideline Dam, Buxton North.
Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in town, you're looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The cutters, and then of course the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned, the decor is on point, the music's on point, everything's on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Dam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely need it too.
Are you planning your next visit to Oil Ridge, Guyana, South America? Well, let's accommodate you at Varon's Cheerful Country Manor. With free secured on-premises parking, our beautiful vacation air-conditioned home offers 3 beds, 2 bathrooms, a spacious kitchen, and all modern amenities. Located at Tushen, on the eastern bank of the mighty Essequibo and the western coast of the Demerara, Varon's Cheerful Country Manor is just a stone throw from the ocean. Make that reservation now on Airbnb and VRBO. For contact, call us on 516-770-3053 or 592-685-3521. Make Varon's Cheerful Country Manor your home away from home.
All right, so you might be wondering where we are, still in Buxton at Club Twilight. That's where we are. So Club Twilight also has like an Airbnb as well. So you could come, drink, drunk, and come in the back here and lie down. Look at that. Look at that. Perfection. And the people come in the room and so on. The bed sheet matching the blind, matching the carpet, matching the this, matching the that. We know but we things in Buxton don't play with we. So definitely if you want to come and you know you may be having a wedding or whatever and you just want to overnight and just have a good time because you're going to be drunk. We got too much road accidents. So you definitely want to come drink, have a good time. They have several rooms that you can rent. You have your toilet, you have your bath, you have your sink, you have your dining area, you have the this is nice. I like it. Anyways, to my friends and my family, if you're looking for me, I'll be overnighting. Also for those persons who are traveling in from overseas, you want a nice, cozy place out of town, then Club Twilight, call them up, look them up on social media. They have their own Facebook page and ensure that you come up the side and have a good time. Have a good time. Have a good time. Sorry. I'm sorry. That's it.
It's here again! The Guyana Public Service Cooperative Credit Union Festive Favorites Christmas promotion is here. Members, here is your chance to win and win big. You can win one of 10 50-inch television sets, over 40 grocery vouchers valued $50,000, one of 10 microwaves, one of 10 vacuums, and one of 10 Samsung cell phones. But wait, that's not all. Members also have a chance to win one 60-inch television, an air conditioning unit, a double-door refrigerator, a trip for two to Kaitro Falls, and a grand prize of $500,000. Yes, you heard right. $500,000. It's Festive Favorites at GPS CCU. To enter this promotion, you must be a member of the credit union in good standing and must have taken your first loan. Each member is entitled to only one coupon. Coupons are available at our Hatfield Street office and our representatives countrywide. Happy holidays from the Guyana Public Service Cooperative Credit Union. People helping people.
Don't be a victim. Beat the heat with EC Crystals. Party ice in large and small quantities. Call 682-7981 or visit us at Club Twilight, Sideline Dam, Buxton North. EC Crystals. Pure party ice.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongley, looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Dam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is, Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely needed too. Thank you.
Comes out your son. You burn this swine when no want you shine. The tree of life, them no want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes, I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive. Kidaki, Red Hat.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more. Calling all vendors, calling all farmers and manufacturers, be part of the Buxton Christmas Market and Small Business Expo on Friday, December 20th from 14 hours and all day Saturday, December 21st at Benjamin's Lawn, Millwalk Road, opposite Tipperary Hall. Get registered. Call 682-7981. Come and put your products on sale and display. Step out to get known.
it will impact landowners, including African Guyanese land ownership and ancestral lands. The discussions also will be centered around the decade of people of African descent, and this is the discussion centers primarily on recognition and justice, two of the UN goals for the decade. Development is a casualty of the proposed amendment. And so our first speaker is Mr. Vincent Alexander. And Mr. Vincent Alexander, I'd like to hand the floor over to you to commence the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Adrienne. Our apologies to the colleagues who were in line waiting for a timely start. In fact, for the time being, we are still limited to Zoom, but in a short while, we'll be able to commence the stream and to go beyond Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. So if there are people who are touching base with you, let them know that shortly we will go beyond Zoom. We will limit it to 100 to the wider broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So we are also live on YouTube. Thank you very much, Kadaki, the man of the moment. And now, colleagues and friends, what is before us really represents a moment that the people of African descent have to take advantage of. Why do I call it a moment? We have been concerned for some time now about the regime in relation to lands owned by the people of African descent, be they ancestral lands, be they private lands. We have been concerned. In response to that concern, approximately a year and a half ago, we called a forum at GITC, which forum was intended to discuss the land issue. You know what happened? The government gave instructions to the administration of GITC not to give us permission or to withdraw the permission to use that auditorium for that forum. And that clearly demonstrated the disposition of the government towards the people of African descent and their land issues. They caused the forum not to be held. That notwithstanding, we went ahead and we held the forum at Crichton Labour College. Today, in the face of the amendment, here comes another moment when we can get together to critically look at this issue and try to forge a way forward. What is the reality we're faced with? We're faced with a bill that seeks to amend the acquisition of land provisions in our laws of Guyana. But this bill is doing so against the context of the manner in which our lands have been treated in perpetuity outside of this bill. And so we know, for example, that people of African descent acquired lands. We know after the acquisition of those lands, in some instances, the lands were not divided in totality. We know that initially our management committee were responsible for those lands, but that those lands eventually came under the control of local authorities. And therefore, what was essentially lands that we acquired as private property, I want to emphasize that point. When our ancestors bought lands, they essentially acquired them as private property. Those lands, through evolution of the local government system, came under the control of the local authorities. And in that regard, the state kind of intervened to have a say and a determination about lands which were essentially inherited lands of the people of African descent. Added to those inherited lands, the ones which we purchased, the state at the time also gave grants. So we had, in addition to the inherited purchase lands, the state also gave us grants of land. And those grants have also been affected by the local authority arrangements, which gives the local authority the power to determine how those lands are dealt with. They have the authority to control and to manage those lands. And of concern to us, in fact, is how that authority has been utilized. We should bear in mind that initially that authority existed in our village councils. And so to some extent that was not very problematic because the village councils were made up of people of African descent, and therefore they were the rightful inheritors to the lands and administered the lands on behalf of people of African descent. But to a very large extent, those village authorities have been absorbed into neighborhood democratic councils, and by virtue of that, those councils can now make decisions, and in many instances, those councils are dominated by people other than the people of African descent. And so what in fact you have is a situation where decisions are being made about lands that are essentially our lands by people who have no right of inheritance to those lands. And so that's a matter that has to be corrected. But it's a matter that the state has taken advantage of, because what the state has done, they're related to those councils, and in some instances not related, but just use power to invade and take over those lands. A very good example of that would be Padoville, for example, which essentially initially belonged to the people of Plaisance. Now, we have a situation here, the moment that we're seeking to use situation here where there is an acquisition of land bill act that's been in place for some time now. And unfortunately, I would argue that no government has really looked at that act to see that that act, in fact, has always been disadvantageous to the people of African descent, and to correct it. Suffice to say that the Granger regime did put in place a land commission, and that land commission was intended to address these problems, but that process was aborted after the government changed. So our concerns remain unaddressed. Not only do our concerns remain unaddressed, but what the government is doing is seeking to exploit the regimes which are to our disadvantage. And therefore, we need to note and to contextualize what is happening. Because we are in the last year of the decade of people of African descent. And believe you me, the United Nations in the Declaration of the Decade was very specific when it said that there is a need for us, people of African descent, and the states in which they live, to address issues of institutional and legal frameworks that have disadvantaged the people of African descent from time immemorial. Now, what I referred to earlier in terms of the local authorities controlling our lands is a part of the institutional and legal framework that need to address so the control of our lands could be returned to us. So we see that what we're talking about is something that has been clearly articulated as an objective of the decade. Unfortunately, we live in a country where our government has been championing reparations, but the reparations they have championed is the reparations from the former colonial masters, and have sought to argue that apart from those reparations, the internal situation is one of equality and there's no need for special attention. The examples I just gave you, in fact, suggest that there's need for special attention. If our lands have fallen out of our control and others are now able to make determination about our lands, and more than that, the government seeks to, from time to time, take control of those lands certainly identifies the problem that exists and certainly speaks to the issue that the United Nations has raised, with the need for institutional and legal changes to allow the people of African descent to have control over those lands. And the fact of the matter is that land is about one example. This manner of affairs goes way beyond lands. But today, we are essentially addressing the matter of lands. And so in the course of this afternoon's discussion, we're going to have representatives from villages who are going to speak to the actual experiences they have had. And we're going to have a lawyer who will give us a more global understanding of where we are in terms of our legal framework in relation to lands and how that legal framework disadvantages us and needs to be addressed. And you will have some specific reference to the present bill, which should be read in Parliament on the 18th, because what that bill does is to enhance state control over the acquisition of our lands in two instances. In one instance, it speaks to the question of people not being able to get compensation if they can't produce titles for the lands. And when our brothers speak, you will know that there's a problem with title, that some of our foreparents bought lands, they have the transports, but over time, those lands have not been transferred over generations. And so the people who are rightly inheritors at this time do not have title. And so they have a situation where unjustly they will be affected because the act speaks to people who can come forward with titles in relation to seeking a compensation. So there we have a clear example of the problem that we confronted, not generally in this instance, but specific to the bill that's going to Parliament. And that bill that's going to Parliament also deals with the question of compensation. And what it does, which was not in the previous act, it allows the government to proceed to acquire lands subject, not prejudiced by people's claim for compensation. And so the lands can be acquired, as was the case in the past. But now it's not subject or prejudiced by litigation in terms of demands for compensation. And in that regard, you have two situations arising. One, they can go ahead and occupy the lands, and the onus is on the persons who have rightful claim to those lands to go to the court to get to litigate for proper compensation. But one has to realize that in that context, many of these people do not have the wherewithal to go to the court, so that in fact an injustice could be perpetrated, and they can end up in fact not having any redress because they don't have the means. And so these are all the issues we have to address. How do we retain control over lands which were purchased by our ancestors? How do we retain control over lands which were granted to our villages? How do we ensure that we can in fact have proper compensation in the instance of those lands being acquired by the state? And how do we provide for what has been an anomaly where a lot of us do not have actual titles, but we have the rights because those lands were acquired by our ancestors and for all intents and purposes bequeathed to us. But in the circumstance of not having the titles, and under this whole question of undivided lands and control of undivided lands by local authorities, we are being disenfranchised and deprived of what rightfully belongs to us. And so for us, rather than having a bill that seeks to strengthen the whole of the state on the acquisition of lands, it should really be a bill that seeks to provide a remedy for all of the problems that we have had in terms of our lands. And the United Nations Declaration speaks clearly to that when it talks about the way in which our system has retained structurally and legally provisions that disenfranchise people of African descent. And here in Guyana, we can speak to that from the standpoint of land, specifically as much as we can speak to that from the standpoint of other things. So we are here in pursuit of the goals of the decade. Goals which talk about recognition for the people of African descent, and recognition here speaks to their rights. Goals which speak to justice, and justice speaks to them being fairly treated. Both are problems we're confronted with, not being recognized as those who have a right to those lands, and being treated unfairly by a legal system that seeks to deprive us of lands that belong to us. I will close at this point, and certainly you'll have a chance later in the program to ask questions based on what I have said, but I will close and cede the floor to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander has dealt with both the challenge, but he started to get into the opportunities or possible opportunities in terms of, and as I mentioned before, that the bill presents a challenge as well as an opportunity. The proposed legislation sidesteps accepted norms and practice, just like Mr. Alexander has said, and will make it easy for the government to acquire lands. All of those things that he has said, instead of also, or in addition to the government being able to acquire lands for public purposes, to also address the ongoing issues for people of African descent, whether it be as it relates to ancestral lands or as it relates to land occupation by African people, and land ownership, people having a right to the land, but not necessarily the title as such. In addition to that, there is also a way of life in terms of, this is also a way of life among African people or people of African descent. So we're now going to go to our next presenter, who is Mr. Dion Abrams, and he's going to address some of that way of life also. Over to you, Mr. Dion Abrams. And while we await on Mr. Dion Abrams, we also like to, when we get to particularly the legal aspect, when Mr. Wade starts to speak as it relates to the legal aspect, you will see that there are two fundamental issues with the amendments. One is, once it states that once the minister is satisfied with the proper title holder, which is a major issue in the African Guyanese community. And the second aspect would be in terms of the power that these amendments will give the government to acquire lands more easily. So we're going to, as soon as Mr. Abrams is ready, we're going to have his presentation. I'd also like to share with you another point as it relates to another point that Mr. Alexander made in terms of the state is seeking to further undermine tenure of ancestral lands and other lands with these amendments. Essentially, the amendments, you would say, it's really a cut and dry amendments, but life is more complex and complicated. And this is a part of the discussion that we're having here, so that we can make it, known or more obvious that life is a lot more complicated and complex than a cut and dry amendments, these cut and dry amendments, if we can put it that way. I see our brother Dion Abrams is ready, so we'll now, I'll pass the mic over to him. Over to you, Brother Abrams.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for your introduction, and I want to to all the people who are online, encourage you to be part of this discussion, which is critical to the future of the African people here in Guyana. I thank you, Vincent, for your introduction, which has set the foundation, the stage for whatever follows, the understanding of what the bill is about and the likely impact that it can have on people of African descent here in Guyana. Ancestral lands are critical to the identity of all peoples. Such lands are germane to the cultural and spiritual and economic life of people. For us, as Africans who were brought here against our will and who suffered over 400 years of indignity, emasculation, and cultural depravity, among other ills, ancestral lands hold a significant and deeper significance. We may want to articulate the fact, as has been emphasized by Dr. Walter Rodney, that Africans moved millions of tons of earth to create the habitable conditions that are enjoyed today by all who come to share this common space called Guyana. In essence, as Dr. David Hines always emphasizes, Africans' sweat and blood civilized these shores so that people who came after slavery entered an environment that was already prepared for their comfortable habitation. Now, these lands are therefore the essence of our being. We need to recognize, as has been pointed out by Mr. Alexander, that in the broader scheme of things, we can argue that Africans, like Amerindians, hold a significant legitimacy to Guyana's landscape. Critical to this discussion, however, is the fact that we emphasize today our concern about this attempt at legitimizing by law the seizure of lands that were acquired through legal purchase and by grant from the British Crown, and that were purchased by our ancestors for future generations of Africans here in Guyana. I want to contend that the PPP has, switch this off, just a little technical that there is inherent racism in the PPP, and there is a consistent pursuit of implementing the African colonization scheme. It seeks to give dominance to Indians in not only Guyana, but in other parts of the world, Fiji, Trinidad, wherever the Indian diaspora exists. And this ongoing quest is what is leading to the current economic genocide against Africans in Guyana. The target of this scheme being engendered by the PPP is focused on two sets of lands that are in the hands, the possession of African Guyanese, and those are the communal lands that were bought, and the proprietary lands that were bought by Africans after slavery, and what we call the village lands. And then there are the lands that are under the control of cooperatives, largely in the hands of Africans. Now, the attempt at acquiring these and controlling these lands by the PPP regime in particular has informed how they have been treating with African communities in terms of development and the progress in relation to these lands. That kind of situation has led them to encourage Indians to squat on lands that are owned by Africans, and then to claim legitimacy to the rights to those lands. You've seen that in Kingley, where a trade unionist, Lincoln Lewis, had a hectic fight with squatters who were fighting to take control of lands that belonged to his foreparents, Kojumak First, in West Berbice, and the actions of the Attorney General in trying to suggest to the people who are squatting on the lands, East Indians in particular, that they had a legitimate right to be there, in spite of all of the documentation, the proof that were presented by Lincoln and his family that these lands belong to Kojumak First and to the heirs of Kojumak First. Then there are examples of similar situations in relation to co-ops. We Seafield Co-op, for instance, through the MMA, lands were taken away from the co-op and distributed by the PPP to their own people, and that matter was eventually taken to the court for redress, and so that the people had a legitimate right to their lands. Now, the push after lands that are under the control of people, and this law that is being passed is a particular concern because there is a thin line. It's so blurred that we cannot clearly define what the law means by land for the development by the state. Because the state and the PPP and the acolytes of the PPP, it's very blurred. We cannot differentiate among those three. The current situation in Seaview, market area where people's lands were bulldozed, their animals buried, their livelihood disrupted and destroyed, is a clear example of what I'm talking about. Because the government argued that the road that they were building, and I must emphasize, we have no problem with development, that Africans have always, and Brother Elton will emphasize this, that we've always been losing lands for the purpose of development, for the railway, for roads, and all these other. And we have never benefited from the loss of these lands. We compensate. And so when those people were bulldozed with the argument that the lands will be used for the building of the road, and then we subsequently recognized and have seen that the road passed clearly outside the occupation of those people in the Moko area there. And now we're seeing development that is taking place on the very lands that were taken away from those people. And that development is not governed. And so when we talk about the PPP and their attempt at using law to fulfill their scheme of degrading and disenfranchising and humiliating Africans, making them economically dependent, the evidence is there. So apart from MOCA, this law basically, I believe, is a result of the recent experience at Peter's Hall, where the government, again, tried to bully African people by taking their lands, claiming that the bridge is going to be passing through their property. And the contention of the people there was that they had no problem giving up their lands and moving, but they were concerned about compensation. They provided evidence that East Indians with smaller plots than theirs, with buildings that were not of the value of theirs, were given almost twice the amount that the government was forcing them to take. And they were arguing that equal treatment should be given to them, just as it would have been given to those East Indians whose lands were acquired by the government for that project. So even as we talk about equity and equality, the law is, in essence, under the control of a government that sees African people as nothing. It is going to be discriminatory, and it is a cause for concern. Now, the forward planning of the PPP, I would argue, has informed their behavior towards Africans in the villages, particularly in relation to lands. They have sought by every means to prevent us from utilizing particularly the vacant lands in our communities, lands that were used for our economic development, through farming in particular, over the hundreds of years, particularly after emancipation, after we acquired those lands in 1839, moving forward. Those lands were productively under cultivation, ground provision, fruits, and then came into being. But the PPP has strategically sought to prevent us from moving onto those lands and keeping them under cultivation by neglecting drainage, neglecting the development of farm-to-market roads, and deliberately creating conditions that frustrated Africans from using and occupying those lands meaningfully, because in their mind, it's going to be more difficult to contest lands that are in occupation than lands that are not being utilized. And so, for instance, when the PPP was removed through elections in 2015, the Granger administration took a project that they had designed for Indian communities and refashioned it for the communities of Mocha, BB, Triumph, Buxton, and Ithaca. It was called the RAID project, a Rural Agricultural Infrastructure Development Project. And that project was aimed at developing the farmland in these communities, providing the needed infrastructure to facilitate drainage, access, and to clear lands that were under forests, to plow those lands, and to give all of the needed help through extension services and otherwise to farmers who are going to occupy them. And we engage themselves in meaningful agricultural practice in those communities. And that project proved clearly that it is not that Africans no longer were interested in farming. It simply showed that once the conditions were right, that Africans will farm, that they will make use of the land. In Buxton, I was chairman at the time, the project was being implemented, and we cleared 350 80 acres of land. And the day when we went to the farmland to distribute, the overwhelming turnout saw plots having to be reduced from 5 acres per person to merely 2 acres. And eventually we had to go beyond the land that was cleared to the extent that we reached from what we call the right of way all the way to the crown land. On both sides, lands that were cleared and lands that were not cleared were occupied. And people cleared, and people began to produce all kinds of crops. It was an experience that took even me by surprise, because youngsters who were liming at the street corners, whom people believed had no interest in work, in providing for themselves meaningfully, took to the farmlands and were producing. Some of them are still there today. After 2020, when the elections were lost and the PPP were installed, that project was abandoned. People's crops were there. We had a prolonged rainy season. And so all the crops that were there, they were growing, but nobody could bring them out because we had to trudge through over 3 miles of mud to get them out. All right. The cooperatives are another thing. I'm going to tie up in a few. Co-ops are on the threat forever. Under Rui, he attempted to fashion a scheme to take the co-op from people, and Hamilton, in delivering the 2023 budget, made it clear the intention of the PPP that thousands of acres of land are sitting under the hands of cooperatives, and the government will not allow lands that they can take and use for their own purposes to remain in the hands of those cooperatives. And so they began a scheme to work with the co-ops. Resistance has, and the public outcry has put a halt to that. But legitimizing the seizure now is going to create these conditions that are going to put us at a greater disadvantage. And unless we are willing to fight against this, we are going to be victims perpetually. A similar scheme was orchestrated in Fiji, and that led to, in 2000, George Spade invading the Fijian parliament and taking control of the entire parliament, including the prime minister. And he admitted publicly that he was able to uncover documents in the prime minister's office that spoke to them pursuing the Indian colonization scheme. And this is what we are faced with here in the land. Threat for our life and livelihood, and we have to take this into our hands and fight to maintain and to keep what is rightfully ours. Thank you. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dion Abrams, or Brother Abrams. And this conversation is very interesting. This is why it's important, you know, in peace building, one of the fundamental elements in peace building is having the conversation. And in this conversation, I'm hearing several things. I'm hearing an expression of the issue, but I'm also hearing a call for greater treatment as it relates to the humanity of African Guyanese in Guyana. I am hearing a call for better treatment in relation to the integrity and the dignity of African Guyanese in Guyana. I am hearing a call for more equity and equality, and with the reduction of inequalities for African Guyanese in Guyana. What this says is that land has struck a chord. Land has struck a chord. You know, very often we talk about change, but for profound change to happen, there must be a trigger. And land seems to be, not only from what I'm hearing in this discussion, but from what I'm hearing from other parts, land for African Guyanese is a trigger. And I say that very deliberately. And so we're now going to pass the mic on to Mr. Elton McCrae, who will present for a short while, and then we'll, the next panelist will be Mr. Darren Wade, and then we'd like to open the floor for discussions. Then we'll have we'd like to leave some more time for our wrap up, because at the end of the discussion session, we'd like to have some clear, give you some clear points in terms of the way forward. Like I said in my opening, this is a call to action and a call for action. Over to Mr. Elton McCrae.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Also, I should thank Ipadi for inviting me here to be part of this panel. And to you, the listeners, I reiterate what Brother Vincent said. We apologize for keeping you this long. Anyhow, I will give you a story of the African alongside lands in Guyana. In the wake of our emancipation, groups of formerly enslaved Africans went about buying failed properties, plantations, in what seemingly were cooperative ventures. Many such cooperative groups were operational before the registration of the Rochdale Pioneers, acknowledged as the first cooperative society in the world. Now, if you look at the Memorandum of Understanding that the people of Victoria had in November of 1838, when they bought Plantation Northbrook, which they then renamed Victoria, you will see that it has all the tenets of a cooperative. Bedford-Acton was bought in a similar manner. Buxton was bought in a similar manner. Yet, we are told that cooperatives was first instituted in England in 1844. Here we are seeing the devaluation of our acumen. Things that we have done means nothing to this dominant culture that under which we live. No, their activities were so vigorous that by 1844, that's the same time with the Rochdale Court, the Times of London referred to our ancestors as bands of little bands of socialists, right? They created fear among the planters because it was clear that if allowed, they would have bought all the plantations because the planters were failing day after day. They couldn't get labor, even though that they had started importing our fellow citizens from India and China. So what they did to curtail our activism toward getting land is that they decided, look, we will not be selling lands to these people as groups, but individuals must purchase this land. But what happened? One man, Kojo Macpherson, bought a plantation. He then immediately divided it among 12 other persons. So it is clear that it was a ploy, that the cooperative spirit existed, that even though whatever you do, So what happens following that Kojo McPherson sale is that they then attempted to establish what is called proprietary villages, as in Queenstown in the Escribo Coast, where they divided the plantations into plots, and then you buy a plot, trying to break this cooperative spirit. To note is that these plantations that we bought, we didn't buy villages. Please remember that. These plantations were very productive. And what they did is that they needed the provisions that we were producing, but they refused to buy it from our foreparents. They refused our foreparents to grant our foreparents license to trade. So we had to be selling to the Portuguese merchants. That is why today, if you go in any African villages, or you would have seen Portuguese shops back in time. When I was growing up, every African village had Portuguese shops. You go to Plaisance, Buxton, Victoria, they all had Portuguese shops. Because these were the merchants, the ones who controlled, and they eventually had the opportunity to create wealth. Our people were stymied into just being primary agricultural producers. But even that, they were not allowed to do undisturbed, because along the way, whenever the plantations need, in the neighboring plantations that is needed labor, they will flood our fields. They control the DNIs, even though we, to the then. So they flood our fields, forcing our foreparents to go to work on the plantations, because they tax our villages. So our people had to get money to pay these taxes. They tax them for the DNI services and the rest of it. Even so much so that these taxations could have been so draconian that a man with a donkey had to pay a tax for that donkey, right? While the estates had mules and donkeys for which there were no taxations. That's how unequal it was. So we were burdened in every which way to keep us suppressed. No. Now, along with the DNI taxation, we were, at times, our villages were sanctioned for what? When their DNI systems failed, they charged us for that our villages were not sanitary. Like BV lost a lot of lands, Triumph lost lands, not BV, Triumph, lands were lost in Triumph, Plaisance, Sparendam rather. Because if you look at those villages, you see in the front of Triumph, we have had agencies like the Public Works Department. We have had the agencies like where the regional office is today. That was government controlled, because those lands we lost because of the fact that they claimed that our DNI was poor, sanitation was poor in our villages. So they took those lands away from us. In Sparendam, what is now the Pradoville 2 scheme was part of the lands that they had taken away from the people of Sparendam, the police station and all. So we have, for whatever reason, they have been taking our lands from us. And this land grab, or what should I say? This method of disenfranchising us to land ownership was not something that we've not been able to deal with. We have not been able to deal with it effectively. Now, our land situation in terms of losing lands started even as just after the people from Victoria bought that village, when the Demerara Railroad was established. No, it was so devastating that one of the persons whose plot was taken away for that railroad, for which there were no compensation given, they just took the lands, and these people had no compensation. This man committed suicide, something that we all know that among Black people is not something easy to come by, but things were so difficult for him. So he was in such a position that he couldn't face looking at his family just not being able to support them. So he committed suicide. So our people has been suffering throughout. Now we look at, and this is not only in post-emancipation Guyana, in post-independence Guyana, we have had issues with our lands too. We know of North and More, one family lost quite a lot of land there, where due to the disturbances of in the early 60s, people went and squat on their lands. The government of the day that took over in 66 granted those people transports for those lands because not regarding it as being fit to give them compensation. Bokol recently, as recent as 2010, people lost lands on the Escribo River at Bokol. We have had issues at Light Tongue on these bank burbies where lands were lost to African families. So successive governments throughout, so I'm not only looking at the situation as regards to the colonials, but even present, or the Guyana governments have been dealing with African lands in a way that has been detrimental to us. Now, we have had today in BV, for instance, there's one man from Moripo, an Indian man, who's claiming that he owns 50 plots in our backlands, which is kind of weird. But no one in BV is vexed enough to challenge him through the courts. Buxton, a similar situation occurred a few years back, I understand, where one man, I think his name was Jinga, was claiming that he owned half of Buxton Back Dam, So our lands have been taken away from us. And in some cases, because of the laws that were instituted in 62 that allows for prescription, in some cases by the state, as I said earlier, where we had eminent domain that allowed the lands that are Plaisance front lands to be allowed to be taken away and today are now in private hands, So these things we have suffered. Recently, last year, to be fact, the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission advertised, had some advertisement running, alerting people about the lands in what we called the tour depth along the East Coast. That is lands that are communally low owned, those lands that were granted to the communities, to BV, Buxton, Golden Grove, and so on, those granted lands, that the people who have interest in those lands should contact the GLSC, that's the Guyana Lands and Service Commission. I don't know how many people did contact them, and in fact, how many people did see those notices. But today we are hearing that a road is to be practicated along what is the CNC, the Central Navigation Canal that Gaisuko used, and it is for this reason those lands are now on the threat. No, Plaisance, a few years ago, the people in Plaisance were being challenged about the ownership of those lands. BV, we have had a situation where a large company was trying to buy lands in that same neighborhood because they knew of the plan, right? In fact, this plan was there even before 2015 because we are aware that the lands of Gaisuko lands at LBI, Moripo, and the rest of it were sold out to developers who are today developing housing schemes in those areas because they know a road will go there. And so those are lands of value. Now, we looking at this bill, what the bill is doing to us. This bill, as I said, the lands that were advertised, that were announced by the by the Lands and Surveys Commission, people are taking lands up in places like Nabaklis and the rest of it. And this bill is there to justify how government will treat families, like our sister mentioned earlier before we started our discussion, what has happened to our family in Parika Backlands, right? They are not willing to negotiate with our that family, but they will at some point after this, if this bill is passed, if they get their way, just give them what they feel is just, right? So it is something that we need to resist. It is something we need to seek support from all quarters so that it does not happen that our lands are not respected. We need our lands to be protected. I mean, when President Granger in 2019 instituted this Commission of Land Inquiry, it was hoped that there would have been, the result would have been an African Land Commission where our lands would have been protected. Lands that our foreparents bought for us, ancestral lands, would have been protected and regularized with regards to ownership. Not as, because we know that, as the minister is now saying, if you cannot prove ownership, those lands are in our great-grandfather's name, so we cannot prove ownership. So definitely, when they put their hands on those lands, we will not be compensated. So it is time that the African community in Guyana get together and seek the just resolve to this situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Elton McCray. And one of the things that, thank you so much. One of the things that you've said is, you said that you refer to an arising dominant culture in Guyana. And it's interesting that you have raised that point in the context of this discussion about the amendments to the Land Acquisition Act for public purposes. And I don't see these two points as being separate and apart. They are intricately connected in terms of the developing dominant culture. And the conversation that we're having this afternoon about lands for African Guyanese. Before our next speaker takes the mic, I'd also like to refer to a point that is, or discussion matter that's in the public domain, that these amendments seeks to, this amendment, it seeks to modernize Guyana. It's part of Guyana's modernization program. And in terms of bringing Guyana on par with foreign countries and other international countries. But one of the points that I'd like to make is that while yes, it's good, it's good to modernize Guyana. Guyana is not an abstract country. Guyana is, there are all sorts of anthropological issues as it relates to modernizing, particularly when we're talking about amendments to the Land Acquisition Act. And when we get to Mr. Darren Wade, he's going to refer to the legal aspect of it. And I think that one of the things that we have to be careful is that we're not becoming a country where there is rule by law instead of rule of law. And Mr. Wade is going to address a lot of the legal issues. One last point I'd like to make here is land also is, development is one of the fastest ways in which African Guyanese can move into the middle class, or that can assist African Guyanese to reduce poverty significantly with the good partnership with the government, in terms of the government putting their resources into developing, supporting African Guyanese to develop their lands so that they can use those lands productively. In terms of Guyana, moving of people in Guyana into the middle class, land can be used for African Guyanese. I guess in other instances too, but the focus of our conversation this afternoon is about African Guyanese. So you may be out there thinking, well, why is this important to me? It's important to you because in terms of poverty reduction and moving African Guyanese up into the middle class, land is, in addition to oil and gas, land is one of the most important elements or possession, I would say, that can make that possible. So I'll now hand the mic over to Mr. Darren Wade, attorney at law, who will address the local as well as global legal issues. Over to you, Mr. Wade.
So, thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon to our other panelists and to the listeners. I believe that we are at the crossroad as it relates to African ancestral lands in Guyana. The question here is whether or not there is any conflict with the proposed amendments and the current laws of Guyana, and in particularly as it relates to African ancestral lands. I will now read from section 3 of the proposed amendment. Section 20, and it says section 24A of the Principal Act is amended by substituting for the section, that section the following. Section 28(1), where any land is required under this act, an interested and authorized person may make a request to the minister for an advance payment on the account of any purchase money or adequate compensation payable under this act. What is an interested person or an authorized person? My legal mind tells me that this part of the section is inconsistent with with the laws of Guyana. It is established by our apex court, the Caribbean Court of Justice, that persons in Guyana owes an absolute and indefeasible title. So I cannot appreciate this section that it speaks an interested and authorized person. What is an interested person? Isn't it not a title holder or someone with a power of attorney? But this section appears to give the minister a wide discretion. And it goes on to say, if the minister is satisfied of proof of title. So if you appear before the minister with a purported transport, we don't know if it's fraudulent. We don't know if it's authentic. The minister now will determine, use his discretion to say, okay, I will acquire this land and I'm going to give A the monies. There is no requirement for advertising. There is no requirement for consultation with the people of the land of which they're seeking to acquire. This piece of legislation is draconian. I recall before I did law, we did a program at the University of Guyana called Development Support Communications, whereby you engage with the parties who the project is going to affect. So this legislation is a recipe for fraud and fraudulent conduct. how will we treat with what we are called family properties? As Brother Elton mentioned, that many of our properties for decades have not been probated. So how are we going to treat with those properties? Is it that one family member out of 100 who's entitled to a parcel of land approach the minister, knowing the PPP, knowing the government, give the minister give that one family member 30 pieces of silver, and he or she sells or agree to the takeover, and there's no recourse for other family members because they say interested and authorized person. And the funny thing is, there is no definition of what an interested person is, or no definition of what an authorized person is. And I believe that was purposely done. This piece of proposal is a recipe for fraud, and it's an attempt, a further assault on our ancestors, the descendants, and all Guyanese. Because it gives the minister the power to steal. It gives the minister the power to conspire without any need to conspire and steal lands, all lands in this country, matter of fact. And our African ancestral lands, they are dear to us because our forefathers, they came here, they developed these lands, and to see it being taken away in such a manner is unacceptable. The question is, where do we move from here? What is the recourse? I believe the time has come for action. I believe the time has come for us to come together. For us to come together and put a stop in to this barefaced lawlessness. Our Constitution guarantees us and protect our rights to property. The Constitution guarantees us our right to equal protection and benefit of the law. And this piece of legislation is in total violation of the fundamental rights provisions and the human rights and our human rights. Like-minded lawyers, historians, surveyors need to come together, need to come together and put our heads, file a legal action, whether or not it's in our local court or the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, as the Maroons did in Suriname. I believe a lot of work was done at the Land Commission of Inquiry. We need to determine what are African ancestral land, where we know them. We could show the attachments to the land. And as in the case of the Amerindian Act of 2006, we need protections of our lands. So I will put a challenge out there for all lawyers, historians, surveyors, and those who could assist us, like the panelists here, to come together and let us file a legal action. Recently, I attended the 25th session of the Working Expert of People of African Descent at the United Nations in New York. That was last week. And this week, we recently concluded another conference in Barbados, the regional session of the people of the decade of people of African descent. And I met with legal experts and professors from top universities and so forth. And they have said to me that they are prepared to assist us in this fight. And people overseas are looking and they want to assist. So the locals must also join us in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Darren Wade. This is really a call to action and a call for action. And I think in more ways than one, this is a wake-up call for African Guyanese. Because I think for a while, African Guyanese have been, I remember talking with a group of people some time back, and they were saying, there's so many things happening to African Guyanese in Guyana. And, people seem to be just calm and taking it. And I said to them, someone once told me that there's something, I'll be frank, let me tell you what I said. I said that the government is going to become so comfortable that one day they're going to put their finger on something that will strike a chord in African Guyanese. And I'll say this afternoon, land has struck that chord. African Guyanese are not going to give up their lands because of no amendments to no land acquisition bill. And I think this has to be made clear to the government. So if African Guyanese are not going to step back and say, okay, there's a new law, take our lands, then where do we go from here? One of the things that come back to peace building, in peace building, they say, keep the conversation going. What Ipajide has done this afternoon, this is an attempt to keep the conversation going. Because I'm going to be very clear, African Guyanese will, in capital letters, not in capital letters, surrender their land to the government for public purposes, while their children and grandchildren are living in rent houses and don't have land to farm. And so if that will not happen, then this conversation has to be taken seriously by the government. We're not joking here this afternoon. This is a very serious conversation. And so we're now going to open the floor for about 15 minutes or so for discussion. If we have more time, then we will add an extra 5 minutes to that. And you please ask your questions. We'll take about 3 or 4 questions, and then members of the panel will respond. So the floor is now open for questions, or even if you have a comment you'd like to add to the conversation. We will give you, let's say, 1 to no more than 2 minutes. I would say 1 to 2 minutes, and so that we can have quite a few persons sharing their views.
Agrimarsh hands up.
Oh yes, I see Agrimarsh hand was up for a while. Agrimarsh, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, all. So, in very practical terms, if my land in, let's say, the back dam of Nabaklis, you have your, and there's quite a large audience here. We have 99 people on this call, right? And those watching online. And I think what most people want to get out of this is what action can they take? And my question is surrounding that. 1, I have my grandmother's transport for plot number XYZ in the back of Nabaklis. What actions can I take? How can I map my front lands, meaning where the house is closer to the main road, to the additional 20 or 40 acres associated with that in the backlands? One, where are those records? I can make an assumption that they are the village office, but this may not be true for all villages. So that's two. Three, once I find out the answer for two, the third question now comes to mind. Where do I go if I want to occupy the land? I assume if I begin to occupy the land based on what's in our current law about prescriptive rights, fencing must be done. Of course, that'll cost. So that automatically says that some people may be able to take action and some would not. But at least leave those viewing and those on the call with at least some practical steps that, okay, we could get a couple people from the village to say, let me go around, start fencing different parts of the land in the back dam, planting, putting up a shack, etc. So whatever happens this week and beyond, we would have taken clear action to occupy these lands. Now, I know there may be some issues and limitations in getting down there. You won't have the vehicle, that kind of thing. But I think if we come up with a clear, focused plan to occupy, I assume, and I'm open to guidance here, there must be some way where we can then look forward to the prescriptive part of our current laws. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. I see we have quite a few persons. I saw Mr. Fraser, Dennis Fraser, and then we'll take Member of Parliament Annette Ferguson, and I also see you, Mr. Cosford Roberts, and so we'll take these other three, and then our panel will respond. Mr. Dennis Fraser, please.
Good afternoon, all.
Boy, are you morning? How are you doing? Are you all right? Morning, neighbor, morning. How are you, the neighbor, morning? Are you welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time? It is 18 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour on the 16th day of December in the year 2024. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Welcome to the program. How have you been? How was your yesterday? As a matter of fact, it was weekend. How was your weekend? What happened to you from Friday evening on to Monday morning? How did you pass those several hours? Look, sounds like 96 hours or so. How did you pass those hours? What did you do that made a difference to your family, your community, your country, and the universe as a whole? What did you do? Did you rest and recuperate? You slept all through the weekend? You did something that added wealth or value to your existence? What happened? Y'all talk to me. But most importantly, I hope you kept well. I hope all of you are in good health and good strength, and you're enthusiastic about the current and the future. I sincerely hope so. As you see, that program which was being played there, it's some Apology yesterday hosted a virtual conference, if I can call it that, consultation, etc. on on this new legislation, this amendment to perhaps what is the Land Registration Act or whichever act governs land ownership in this. a legislation which proposes, in simple terms, to allow the minister to decide who gets to keep their property and who doesn't. Right? An important and interesting discourse yesterday. And that is why I replayed it for you this morning. I'm hoping that those of you who didn't see it yesterday, because I could have only broadcast on YouTube yesterday. This thing is getting dire. I was blocked from Facebook yesterday. I couldn't broadcast on Facebook yesterday. And I'm encouraging you again, go across to YouTube. Keep going across to YouTube, you know. Otherwise, you're going to lose out on some of these things when they happen. Because the time it will take me to rectify what's happening at Facebook will be a while. Get accustomed to going over to YouTube. Yeah, so those of you who didn't get to view and listen, this morning's replay was particularly for you, and so that you can zoom in on some of the issues and we can address some of those issues. Frankly, this must not go quietly into the night. I think the next reading of the bill is on Wednesday. And you see, I don't like to second guess people, and I don't like to. Sometimes I try to avoid making certain comments, lest people feel I'm trying to upstage them or I'm criticizing them for the efforts and so on. But one of the things I expected, I really was looking forward to hearing out of that the forum yesterday, was that a resolution was going to be passed that 100 million people will turn up in front of the National Assembly on Wednesday to protest even the second reading of that bill. Because as far as I know, if I remember my social studies, the bill is read 3 times in Parliament, then voted upon, and sent to the President for assenting. And so if the first reading would have alerted us to what is about to take place. The second reading is closer to the third reading, and who knows? I mean, by now the other people should be out. Are they going to attempt for a second and third reading? Remember, they have the majority in the House. And so is the PPP going to go to the House and somebody moves a motion to say this bill should be read for the second and third time at this one sitting? You see, it's all well and good to discuss and analyze and postmortem. They say postmortem don't bring back death, it's tell why you died. And we've seen many deaths like this before. So why wait for postmortem? As of today, quite frankly, people should have been in front of the Attorney General's chambers, because this bill is being piloted apparently by the Attorney General's chamber. Well, Attorney General, he's the legal advisor for the government, so that falls at his foot. People should be in front of the Attorney General's chambers protesting, even the second reading of this bill. And then tomorrow, perhaps the same thing. On Wednesday, definitely in front of the National Assembly. But I'm sure all those of us who attended, all those of us who organized and so on, we feel good. We were able to sit yesterday and discuss this issue and identify where the problems are and so forth. And, we know where the problems are. We know who are the people creating the problems for us. And so we should be confronting those people. However you choose to confront them is another issue. But we should be confronting those people. This thing is looking at us stark as day. This amendment is because of what happened at on East Bank there with Auntie Vashti and the others, and the rulings of the court. The PPP and their powerful friends were not and are not happy with the little victories that those ordinary people got over them. And so, in future, we don't want anybody to hamburg us some running roughshod over them and doing whatever we want at the rate at which we want, whether or not we compensate them. And so we are going to change the laws. We are going to amend the laws to give us that right. And so as property owners, we have to say, well, hey, we are not going to sit idly by and allow you to empower yourself to disenfranchise us, our property at your whims and fancy, like they did at Cane View, like they did, somehow it's beating me. That's not Pearl. Where Auntie Vashti is, or was. Like they plan to do across the country, like the residents of Pleasance perhaps are finding out by now. Strange enough, I haven't seen any displacement at Buxton yet, but I'm waiting with bated breath. You know, there's a monkey know which limb to jump on. And I will also say, if you conquer the majority, then you will conquer the rest. And so what the PPP has done in this instance that I talk about Buxton, they work from the east and they work from the west. And so they're working inward to Buxton. At least that's how I'm seeing it from where I'm sitting right now. At some time they will come when they will have to deal with Buxton and Buxtonians. But here we have, if you got to deal with Buxton and Buxtonians first, they're going to set the pace. And the fire might catch on. And so it becomes difficult. It's a psychology, folks. But if I walk from outside, east and west where the weaklings are, I'm calling them that. No disrespect. Then by the time I get to Buxton, Buxton will realize it stands alone. And so for the greater part, what are we going to do? This year, all of them others done sell out. What are we going to do? That's what I'm seeing. But this is not a situation where we can sit back and relax and ask ourselves, what are we going to do? Thank you. Peter is all I was talking about. Right. We can't sit back and just have discourses about these issues and plan to go to court. By the time we go to court, oh God, that nasty, dirty, that stinking word come on my tongue just now. Thank God I got good control of this tongue. By the time we go to court and we hear from the court, the bill would have already been passed and assented to. And then the court is going to tell us, well, the legislators have spoken, we can't do anything about it because of separation of powers. Could we have moved to the court from the time we heard the first reading? Could we have? Did we not? Why haven't we? But is it okay to just go to court? I've been arguing since 2020 that we have to learn to fight on several feet or several fronts. While they be running to court on the election, this and the election that, I say full the streets with protesters. So people will come to understand that if in the eyes of the people they don't get justice on the court, they're going to take it on the streets. And this approach works across the world. I don't know why we in Guyana, we're not employing such tactics. Our people as of today should be on the road. Whether it's in front of the Attorney General's chambers, whether it's in front of the office of the President, whether it's in front of the Lands and Survey, wherever, somewhere, our people should be on the road in the large numbers for the rest of the week until it is agreed that that bill will be shelved. While our people are on the road, the likes of Darren Wade and other legal luminaries and legal minds and representatives and so on can go to court. But you need something to put a spoke in this runaway train while going to court. Talking, as it is, will not stop Aaron Nandlal nor the rest of the PPP from going ahead with this bill. Confrontation bill. And it's a shame to say, quite frankly, our African Guyanese leaders are afraid of confrontation. Y'all criticize me for it, but that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Y'all seem to be afraid of confrontation. Everything is this freaking peaceful, diplomatic way. Diplomacy don't work for black people. When they see the angry black man, then it's when people just pull back and say, oh, shoot, by we in trouble. Diplomacy don't work for we. And so I don't understand why we always trying to be diplomatic. It's only force the PPP understand. Why you think the PPP only understand force? So it would appear that only force the PPP understand. Because every time we have had to get a resolution to a situation in its country involving the PPP, we had to become the angry black man. And we have come into an era now where suddenly people believe that we cannot afford to, or we should not be the angry black man. Georgiana said, what is her name? The moderator said, she has always said that the PPP is going to do something that is going to cause black people to lose it. And she believes this is the instance. I'm going to say this. Again, I can get criticized, but that's me. I speak my truth. It's not the first time PPP taking away black people land. Whether through the courts or mere bullyism or skullduggery, corruption at the lands and survey and deeds registry and all of it. It's not the first time. And black people didn't trip. We didn't lose it. Why you think no? We don't lose it. If black people don't lose it now to confront this bill, then they're not losing it. Because if you don't stop this bill, you allow the government to empower themselves by law to come after you. And they, well, I got to use a strong word, like jackass. And the judiciary in this country, they will simply tell you the government followed the law, and they can't do nothing. So your best defense is to ensure that there is no law like that on the books. And the only way to stop a law like that on the book is to really confront this thing before it becomes a law. What are going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? I don't care how much dispute we got over plot of land as a family or as a community. The first order of the day is to protect the ownership of that land. Defend the ownership of that land. And when we settle the ownership and we ensure that it is well secured, we could deal with the dispute internally. I heard about Elton Macquarie talk about all the lands that people have lost. BV, some Indian man is claiming 50 plots of land. And those of you who understand black people and land, when you got a central plot, which you, let me say the house lot, you usually have 2 or 3 additional pieces south of that. Because the section A to Z, whatever, you have pieces of land in different sections attached to that mother lot. And so in order for this Indian man to own 50 plots of land at the back of BV, he has to have 50 mother lots. That's the simplicity. 50 mother lots. You get 50 mother lots by? If you get 50 mother lots, 50 lots at the back. Because I buy those lots some residents who got mother lots. Is it possible that 50 residents, 50 property owners from BV sold their back lots to this Indo-Guyanese? especially in the time that he's talking about. And it's frightening, it's disgusting. And say nobody in BV has gotten angry enough to challenge this claim by this man. Where are the ancestors? Where are the offspring of the ancestors? Where are they? So if you look at that on a wider scale, ask the question, where are the owners and representatives of all of these lands that the PPP is trying so desperately to take away? We saw when Lewis stood up against such attempts. Where are the other people? I'm going to say something here this morning. Remember when the chairman was selling out BV? Y'all remember? The land at that supermarket on at Post North and so on, BV land. Then the chairman was selling it out, and I raised the concern. And I kept calling on BV people to step up and deal with it. What the chairman looks like? In whose name was the chairman cheering? Chairman looked like me. Chairman looked like you. And he was a representative of the political representatives of us. As far as I remember, he was a representative of the PNC or the coalition, whatever you want to call it. He campaigned on their ticket through the local government elections, and he sat there, and that is what he did. I understand there's a woman there now. I'm not casting him, I know with no lawsuit, but y'all know she. I understand she's doing no different. But these political parties that these suckers represent don't have the gall or the gumption to remove them from the offices that they hold, because they are doing a disservice to the majority of the people who voted to put them there. So what burden, politically and otherwise, are our political representatives prepared to take in situations like this? If you got a chairman functioning in your name, I am chairman of the BV, wherever NDC, because I campaigned on the PNC ticket. And so by virtue of the PNC supporters voting, I became chairman. So I became a councillor. And then with the support of the PNC councillors, I became a chairman. Why doesn't the PNC, through its councillors, have control of what I do at the council? Why they can't hold my balls and twist it every time I'm stepping out of line? Why can't they move a vote of no confidence and have me removed? Because the greater party are waiting on instructions from the political leadership, and the political leadership got their head buried in so much crap. And as far as I'm concerned, sometimes I say they don't even understand what the political duty to the people who support them. Politics is more than power in government. It's economics. And so when you hear Brother Elton again spoke about this Indian guy, and then he spoke about the situation in Buxton with Jinga. He said the situation existed also with Jinga owning a large quantity of land in Buxton. Well, it is not totally accurate that he owned it, but it is totally accurate that he, what shall I say, occupied it. And he occupied it through collusion with people who look like you and people who look like me. And so we got a collusion problem in our communities and in our homes. And the same collusion problem is bad for us if we allow that particular amendment to pass, because the bill say any interested party. How many interested parties get in a property that your parents died or your ancestors died, your foreparents died and left intestate? I know it's intestate, most of you, I guess, I hope. When they die without a will, so it's family property. When you got a family property, how many interested parties they got? A whole ton of us. I'm going to explain that to you a little. A whole ton of us are interested parties. And among that ton, you will find colluders. And so it's easy to get one of these colluders to say, well, yeah, I agree with what you want to take it and give me the money under the table. How little it is. And disenfranchise, disempower all the others who have entitlement to. That's what the bill going to do. That's what the bill permits. So who wants to wait until that bill is passed and then cry tears? I put a stop to it before it reaches the third reading and passage to be assented to. Let me explain the collusion that happened with Jingle in Buxton. Buxton has private ownership, proprietorship in its backlands. Like I say, if you got a model lot, you got lands in other sections of the village, including the backland. Those lands, the owners can choose what they want to do with them. They can sell them, they can farm them, they can lease them, or rent them, as we say, to others if they don't want to occupy them. What a private proprietor does with his property, quite frankly, is none of our business, as I would say. But then we come to the communal lands, which are under the care of the Buxton Falls NDC. If you want to occupy a piece of land that is under the care of the Buxton Falls NDC, you're supposed to go to the Buxton Falls NDC and enter into an agreement of lease of these farmlands, or whichever land is under the control of the NDC. And so you're expected to pay yearly rates or monthly rates, whatever, in exchange for you occupying those lands. Part of the rule says only people who live in the NDC area can benefit from that facility. So the lands at the back of Buxton Friendship, when it was the village council, was lands for the use of residents of Buxton Friendship. But when it became an NDC, Neighborhood Democratic Council, what you actually have in a Neighborhood Democratic Council or a Neighborhood Democratic area is shared resources. Whatever is in any community in that neighborhood district belongs to all the residents or can be shared by all of the residents in that neighborhood district. So when you have the NDC now, NDC, Buxton Falls NDC is about 17 communities, I think, from Buxton all the way to Falls. Anybody from that stretch can now apply to the NDC to occupy a piece of land in Buxton Baghdad that falls under the control of the Buxton Falls NDC. As long as it is vacant and the council votes on it and so on and so forth, that person can get an arrangement of lease. But Jinga was not from the Buxton Falls NDC. Jinga is from Annandale. So start to think and ask yourselves, how then will be able to get so many plots of land in the Buxton Baghdad through this? Colluders. There were cane farmers in Buxton Baghdad, or there were so-called cane farmers in Buxton Baghdad who were leasing large plots of land from the NEC under the guise of planting cane for themselves, and then they sublet it to Jingo, or they hand it over to Jingo to farm for a raise, a payday. There were people in the NEC council. There were people on the council. High people too, big people too. People in high position who are also dealing on the hand with Jingo to get land in the Buxton back down to farm. Them time Cane wasn't king, but Cane was making money. And so the more cane beds, as they say, you occupy, the more you get to produce, the more money you get from Gaisuko as an incentive and thing. I think Gaisuko used to pay you 3 times a year. Right? Or at least twice a year. I like Christmas time now. Cane farmers, they're doing well. Get all kind of incentives and so on and so forth. And so our own people were involved in this collusion and corruption to put lands at the back of Buxton in the hands of this gentleman. Are you saying to me now, when we allow this bill to pass, they're going to behave differently? I don't think they will behave differently. And so the best protection for your property and our property is to ensure that this bill doesn't get passed. Because it will be so easy for this PPP government to push black people off of co-op lands, to push black people off of ancestral lands, to push black people off of lands in general, and Guyanese in general. African Guyanese can suffer the worst, but other Guyanese will also suffer. I saw a comment here this morning. Which black man like to sweat? Something to that extent. And I want to say this. It doesn't concern me whether or not the black man is sweating on the land that he owns. What concerns me is that he has a right to ownership. I don't care what you do with the land that you own. If I have a car out there and it is my car and I want to leave it on my bridge to rot, that's my car. It doesn't give you the right to come and take it because I am not utilizing it how you think I should utilize it. And so this argument that black people got large swaths of land across this country that are not, quote unquote, gainfully utilized, doesn't give the government a right to acquire it. It doesn't. And so this argument that these clowns are coming with, to say that black people got land that they don't use, and black people got land that they ain't know what to do with, and black people got land just lie there in bush. How much African Guyanese want to break sweat for their body, from their body? This clown, Kemchan Arinarain. It doesn't concern me what black people do with the land that they own. The fact is, they own it, and the ownership should be respected. Is it okay for me to walk into your yard and pick up it because you got it and you don't use it? That is stealing. Is it okay for me to come into your yard and take your bicycle because you got it and you don't use it and give you $1,000 and say this compensation to it, this fake compensation in my mind? That's bullyism. And that is what this bill seeks to do. But the question is, what will we do about it? What are our leaders prepared to do about it, apart from being diplomats? Huh? Apart from being diplomats, what are we prepared to do about it? That's the question. I'm tired of the discourses. We have to discourse. We have to discuss. We have to help others to understand the problem. An understanding of the problem, as I usually say, education is supposed to change behavior. An understanding of the problem is supposed to change our approaches. Now that the process of education has started or has ended, where's the action? What actions have been recommended by this discourse that we had yesterday? Darren Wade has said it clearly. He is prepared to go to the court. He's calling on others to go to the court with him. What should we do in the meantime? Why have we not been called to go on the streets in the meantime? Before I warm up the lines, I think it was Agre who said part of the claim of prescriptive right is you must show occupation. Therefore, occupying a land to show ownership or claim ownership, it has to be fenced in and so on and so forth. And Black people problem is that we ain't got money to do these things. Black people problem is that we think too modern sometimes. And we don't reflect on what the ancestors did to protect what they had. Born and bred Buxtonian. How many of you can remember seeing your old folks fence the yard with wattle? Y'all know it's wattle, right? How many of you seen the old folks fence the yard with wattle? Fence the yard with Auntie Desmond. You know the Auntie Desmond? Then you go into the back there, you get them Auntie Desmond trees. And you cut their trunks and you cut their branches. You look for the fat ones like poles. And you dig your holes and you put them down. And you impose on the land, you fence the land, you can buy a roll or two of barbed wire. And you pull it around those whatever we call them, those trunks, those branches that we planted. And so it demarcates our land. It shows that this is the land that we are occupying. The old folks did that. In some instances, they went further. They planted those same tree trunks, branches as poles, and they used smaller branches as runners. And then they interlaced, my word here, wattle. Yes, John C. Paul, wattle is that central vein or that main backbone of the branch. The coconut branch. Many of them stripped off the branch and made broom, and they used that main bone of the branch, let me call it that, and they fenced their yards. But we modern African Guyanese only believe that we are fencing a yard if we can go and buy whatever posts or concrete blocks or zinc sheets. Come on. We have to start somewhere and stop saying we don't have what it takes. We have what it takes. But some of us got too much damn pride. Some of us got too much pride. You got to creep before you walk. Brick by brick by brick. Baby steps you have to take to get to the top. You want to get to the top? You must make the first step. Let us start finding, I wouldn't say innovative ways, because the ancestors left us examples of how we should deal with certain issues. Boxing people stop trade. Why boxing people stop trade? Because the government of the day wanted to tax them without consultation. They said we ain't gonna stand for that nonsense. The government must talk with us. And boxing people stop trade. They didn't say trade is tons of iron and they're gonna run over we and they're gonna kill me. Like some of the leaders telling us, we don't want to protest, the PPP gonna shoot you out. The lines are opened. 6225933 is the number to call. Let us stop this diplomatic thing. Diplomacy don't work. Ask the great US if diplomacy works. If diplomacy used to work, Israel would have stopped bombing Israel, Syria, Palestine, you know. Call you on.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. I remember when the Buxton stopped the train historically. I remember when a little man named Mingo got West Coast Burbies to block the road, put houses in the middle of the road, and when they did what they did to the Henry brothers, we demonstrated. So if the PPP feel like pushing us, they can continue to push us. And naturally, we'll respond in likewise, in like way, in like fashion. You could line your farm with coconut trees on the left, to the right, to the front, and to the back. And that be a demarcation line. You don't have to buy wall of a post. I was pleased to see Darren Wade from West Coast Burbies, Hopetown, Litchfield, represent like he did yesterday. Darren Wade, that's the type of representation that we need from you, my brother. So I'm proud to see you represent on that front. I was encouraged by what Mr. Abrams of the WPA said. He said we must fight and take back what belongs to us.
Sophie,
and that was echoed by Vincent.
Sophie, let me correct you. I don't think Mr. Abrams was representing WP at that forum. Mr. Abrams was representing African Guyanese at that forum. Let's make the difference.
Okay, good. Sure, absolutely. I was proud to hear him say, let's take what belongs to us. Mr. Alexander and the other brother there all did an excellent job. I want to commend them for doing that. And we should have started this fight a long time ago, ever since when Mr. Vincent Alexander talked about when we had the conference or tried to have a conference at the TCI in Georgetown, and the PPP tried to postpone it. President David Arthur Granger gave us the blueprint. We're still waiting to see the results from the blueprint. Nevertheless, I'll leave that discussion for another day. We're talking about fighting now. I want to ask this question, Mr. Amsterdam, because you asked quite a few questions. On what basis do Amerindians hold land in Guyana? You don't have to answer. That's a question I want to put out there because Mr. Darren Wade asked about a historian injection. He's calling on historians and legal minds and academics. So, on what basis do Amerindians have a claim to land? And whatever that basis is, don't African Guyanese have the exact and similar bases? It was Jack Deere who said contracts are sacrosanct. There are contracts in law, there are contracts in history, historical contracts. There are all types of contracts. Are those contracts going to be honored? How are Amerindian contracts honored? Amerindian never had any piece of paperwork that says they had land here. What paperwork did Amerindians show up with? Look, brothers, we support the Amerindian fight. But what paperwork did Amerindians present to the Parliament of Guyana or the National Assembly to get 18% of Guyana? So we come along with transports. We come along with treaties and cultural agreements and the right of inheritance, as the Amerindians have right of inheritance. But ours aren't honored. So that's a double standard. So when Darren Wade asks for historical input, we should begin there as well on the issue. On another subject, very briefly, there is a thing called carbon farming. And Irfad Ali is always running around the world collecting millions of dollars for carbon farming and carbon credits. Him and Jack Deal. That's their project. They like to thief money like that. And millions of dollars been going only to Amerindians. But as far as I know it theoretically, the carbon farming and the carbon sinking by using our agricultural lands to suppress greenhouse gases and greenhouse effect doesn't only come from unused Amerindian lands. Those carbon footprints and the carbon sinking comes from unused backlands that African Guyanese own in Buxton and Pleasance and Ithaca and West Coast Berbice and Sukuba Coast. So when we talk about contributing to carbon sink, our ancestral lands as African Guyanese pay a large contribution to that because carbon sinking blows around, right? The atmosphere doesn't have any boundaries. Carbon sink that they use and claim comes from Amerindian lands, that's been coming from African lands too, but Africans don't benefit from that. See, it's all tied in. So people are raping us. They're raping us physically on the soil, and they're raping us from the carbon credits, which come from our African soils, what they call unused. But it's not unused when you're teething it and using it and putting it up on the Amerindians and selling it and getting millions and give to the Amerindians, and you don't give to the blacks who contribute to the carbon sinking. Mr. Polari Joe. Right? So, when Mr. Darren Wade asks, and I'm glad that he asked, so we've got several positions of which to approach equal protection under the law. If we're going to protect Amerindian lands, because they're considered to be carbon sinkers and carbon farmers, then what about African Guyanese lands in Mokka, in West Coast, Berbice, Plaisance, Ithaca, Little Africa, all around Guyana? I think that on Wednesday, Gordon Mosley, I can only recommend Mr. Adams. He's been doing a good show. And Travis Chase, etc., and Chabral should be present in front of wherever we're going to protest. At least we need to interject and intercede in the news platform every evening, our campaign, our protest issue. We can't wait for somebody to put it on the news. We have to make it part of the news cycle. Mr. Amsterdam, thank you for giving me time. This conversation should not be swept under the rug. As the sister said, this should be the trigger, metaphorically speaking. Once again, thank you.
Thank you
for
for
giving
calling.
Mm.
me the time.
The lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. Let me remind you of the Buxton market coming up.
Calling all vendors, calling all farmers and manufacturers, be part of the Buxton Christmas Market and Small Business Expo on Friday, December 20th from 14 hours and all day Saturday, December 21st at Benjamin's Lawn, Millwalk Road, opposite Tipperary Hall. Get registered. Call 682-7981. Come and put your products on sale and display. Step out to get known.
Caller on.
Yes, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
And to all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning to you and all my black brothers and sisters in Guyana. First thing first, we're going to get there. The road is rough, but remember the word of God. Don't look back. Don't look back. I want to talk about concerning land in Guyana. I always said what Jagan said, own the land. You go own a country, but in a mean country, it means you're your own black man. Whatever you have to do, do it. If you have to kill black man, punish them, kill them young teenagers, children, do it. You remember when I'm going office? I don't know if you remember, but if you still have cancer lecture and that, you can say yes too. When Anil got Bobbies and tell them Bobbies and pick up the land, pick up black man land.
Did we lose Flash? Seems so. Call it there. The lines remain on 6225933 is the number to call. You tune to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It is 8 hours 30 on the 16th day of December in the year 2024. Okay. Let me see if there is any voice note. We are not getting a call. And so let me tell you that Domit's Tasty Delight is presenting this Saturday at the Camberville Housing Scheme a lunch to go fundraiser. Right? Lunch is served from 12:30 to 5:30, and the cost per ticket is $2,000. So go there and support the thing on the 21st of December at 166 Camberville Housing Scheme, the Lunch to Go fundraiser hosted by Domit's Tasty Delights. Call it on. Thank you. Call it on. Caller, you are on.
Yes. I was saying hello, hello. I can remember when the government take over PPP. Anil went to Borbis and tell him Borbis and pick up black man land. None black lawyers did not take that man to court. And you see what it costs?
Caller, you heard Anil say that? I'm just asking. I don't know. I'm asking.
Yes,
Okay.
he went to Borbis and tell Borbis and go pick up the land.
I must send me
that.
the proof. I would like to see. Continue.
There you go, girl, Flash Garden. You always like to see food with Flash Garden. That's okay.
Flash Garden?
That's okay.
You have to understand, and let me repeat this. When people come on this program and they talk certain things, I have to protect me. And so
when somebody outside there, outside there must see that bit outside here, Amsterdam, and then tell
doesn't it help me? Doesn't it help me if I have it in my possession? Huh? It helps me if I have it in my possession. So when I ask you to provide it for me, I would like to have it in my possession. So when they say, well, this thing, I can say, well, here is it.
All right. All right.
Go ahead.
Next time I will send you a video and I do hope you play the video.
Exactly. That's what
I'm going to do.
Good.
I will take back my time. Yes.
Your time, your own time on this. Anyhow, go ahead. Go right there.
No, you interrupt me for facts.
Facts, go ahead. Listen.
Yes. You know, we're talking about land and land. Okay, let me use the word. It is alleged that a lot of black lawyers that represent holy people when them take away black man land, you know. But today they're coming and telling us, oh, look what the law made, look what the man did. I can remember, let me use the word alleged, so I wouldn't get in trouble, that a black lawyer He represents the DPP, that wicked woman, who buy our ancestral land, black man land for far less. I know the name. If somebody know the name, could say, but it is alleged that that black lawyer represent that Collie lady, that DPP, where she buy black man land for far less, and a whole heap of them buy black man land for far less. Now, what we standing for? When we representing them, when them do wrong thing to our ancestral land, and then come back and tell us, oh, the Collie man is wrong. We got to stand for one thing. We got to fight these people them. I think we could lose everything. My grandmother teach me, not easy come to black man. We got to fight for it. But you know what Butterfly's Garden? When I'm telling you what's outside, they got about 2 or 3 programs. And them could end up in office. Black man got about 50 programs there, you know. About 200 out of there, you know. But them could still in office. And mark you up. And take away what belongs to us. And nobody saying nothing at all. But you only talking and talking and talking. I'm calling for Abinati, loud and clear. I'm a strong supporter for you and God. Because God said, rally behind you. You have to go outside there and stop this runaway train. Enough is enough, my brother Abinati. Enough. If those who own that for them, for what belongs to them, that our ancestors died and leave it for us. It is time for you to carry them. Don't Guyana now. Don't Guyana now. This is enough. You see, we are not together. That's why. I see now. I see. So don't ask me for evidence. Them Rasta man, they protest in front of annual office to pass a law to legalize weed, ganja. Where are them now to go back and sell the land now in front of annual protest for annual? Because if you don't have land, you can't plant your weed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your call.
Morning, Brother Kadaki. You see, some people don't like hear the truth. You understand? Plenty of people don't like hear the truth. And they got a thing that said that the truth hurts. You see all them things, Brother Kadaki, we see the PPP going on with. All them corruption and thieving, and they just don't care. They was given that leadway because those who supposed to hope.
Caller, hold your line. We're playing a voice note.
Hold them in check and putting up the work, and we got to face the facts. Gotta face the facts. I have never seen in my life that I on board in Guyana and know about politics and everything. I have never seen a weak opposition. Plenty people don't like hear the kind of talk, but it's real. I have never seen a weak opposition and a weak opposition leader like what we got now. And that thing causing the PPP for just go on, just blase and go on, because you know why? We leader make it easy for them that they could get more careless and they would know, not that they believe, they know that nothing will happen because we lead tell we that we ain't going out on the streets anyhow. Yeah, so when the pressure come down on you, try to, put it into context and them thing. But he say that he putting nobody and he going out on nobody, there no protests and them. This is the first thing he do say. When the pressure come down, he start to trying to make it up and thing. And from the time he says it, make it more easy for the people. Because they know that when they do it until they take we land and this and we put us to man and we gonna done because you know why? Two, we gonna run out there and we gonna done because you know why? The opposition leader tell me. So we get no hope for we leadership. Much less we leader. And this sad. And for all them people, for all them who's the supporters, because I am a supporter of that the opposition here, I tell you. And I call in a spade, and for all those who don't want to call it out and them kind of thing, they don't like Brother Arvin now. Because once you call it out and you let we lapsing in this area, it's going to help him. It's going to help people pick up the steam. Young people hurting and they're complaining a lot because they got no leadership with them. They got none. And it's a sad state we're in, all because of the weak opposition and weak opposition leader.
What about the weak people who are not prepared to stand up to defend what is theirs? Caller, you got a lot of background noise. You like.
Oh, sorry about it. Let me just pull over.
God, while you pull over, let me tell you something. I'm not joking when I ask about the weak people who are not prepared to defend what is theirs. We got a situation in Boxing Friendship where one man and maybe a group of thugs right now with him have been occupying private proprietors' land for quite a while. Right now, he's in bed with the PPP, grading people land and maybe allocating it and all kinds of things. And those proprietors are not doing what they are expected to do. The opposition leader is supposed to come and protect their private property? No. There are steps that they can take to protect their private property. But they can blame the opposition leader, right? Good. We have to stop blaming the opposition leader for everything. Everything. I'm not saying we don't have to hold him responsible or accountable for leadership. But I've said it before, and I'm saying it now. If people take the lead and go there to defend their rights, the politicians, whether opposition leader or whoever want to be and all of that, they're going to either follow or get out of the way. They're going to either follow or get out the way. Call you on.
Morning, Kadaki. The Kenyan kids did not wait on any opposition leader or any leader to come out for them to protest against the nonsense that Ruto was going to, the nonsense taxes that Ruto was going to implement in Kenya. And he eventually fired the entire cabinet. Anyhow, I think sometimes people get too emotional. When we saw what Modi said about Ghana being an Indian, mini Indian state, everybody got into the feelings. And we forgot about the agenda. There is an agenda. And I keep saying, those people are forming alliance with people outside of there that is aligned with their stuff. We are not forming alliance with people who went through this stuff. And when I say this stuff, the apartheid state that is being built in Guyana, economic apartheid, racial apartheid, everything that is being built in Guyana. And it's not by chance that Modi said that thing. The Hindu supremacist, it's not by chance he said that. All of us got into our feelings about what he said. Where our alliance?
We didn't get no feelings. Scholar, let me interrupt you. If we had gotten into our feelings, the streets of Georgetown would have been full. We ain't getting no feelings. We run remote.
Thank you very much. Where is our people to form our alliance with the people who came out from the latest apartheid system, which is South Africa? Where are our people to talk to Tabu Mbeki? Where are our people to talk to Dr. Litchfield, who is a woman that was trained by the Russians and the Cubans in Angola to fight against the apartheid system? Where are our people to talk to Jacob Zuma, who went to jail for 10 years during the apartheid system? This thing is building up an apartheid system. We're not talking to any of our sponsors. We're not talking to people like P.L.O. Lumumba. You know who we're talking to? The people who vetoed at United Nations when they talk about the abolition of apartheid, the people who vetoed it, we want to call them our goddamn alliance people, and that is America. These people ain't got no time about us black people. Look what they did in South Africa, same thing they did. They moved the blacks off of the prime land and put them into townships. And this is the same thing that is happening home. But our people are not doing the right thing. We are waiting in our brain. For what? When you end up living in a slum or till down in the bush, you can't blame Aubrey. You can't blame Aubrey. You end up don't getting no job. You can't blame Aubrey. Come out there and do what you have to do. Do what you have to do. We have to form alliances with our people who felt or went through what we are going through. And that is how we're going to get teaching and map out how we're going to deal with our problems. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your call.
Kadaki, blessings and good morning to you and our listeners. Kadaki, a real and a true leader, love others, the development and success. The VP, I stand for correction. The VP said that since they resumed office, he had give 3 increase in salaries, and next year he will give an 8% increase. But if you give 3 increase since you resume office from 2020, and it's an oil producing country, fastest growing economy, and the people and them crying out so much, is either the VP line, the population don't like the VP, or the population line on the VP. Karaki, I have a friend in Albaiston, and I talked to he a couple days ago, and he tell me, bro, I just barely lifting my head above water.
You had a lengthy time already. Don't hear anything. Sir. All right. You called already, right? All right. All right. Let me put it like so you can bring the evidence. All right.
The VP trying to keep
Go.
a certain ethnic group in publish. So whenever they have a little spare time, they will throw some crumbs on the ground, and the black people will be like yard fowl and chicken, so they're gonna be scratching and picking. That is the kind of life that the VP want for African people, and that's not good enough. And I know that the people in Guyana are wising up and seeing what it is happening. So Karaki, have a blessed day, and I'm out, my brother.
Yeah, so thank you for that voice note. We have another one. It is 11 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour, and you're still tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am still your host, Kidaki Amsterdam.
Kidaki morning viewers. Guyanese, there's 4 press conference. One is a so-called one, and the 3 are the opposition party press conference. Oh my God. Yo, y'all be the judge, man. Look at our opposition party's press conference. Look how much people that be sitting at that press conference on the opposition parties there. And look at the so-called PPP press conference. You can see exactly the dictatorship install government we're dealing with. Why only this man alone at the press conference? You know why? You know why? Because nobody else can speak. Nobody else don't have intelligence to go on that press conference with him. Because you know why? They're going to embarrass you. You understand me? Look at the opposition. Everybody highly qualified, highly intelligent. Look how these people speak to the media. Look how these people bring out the words. Look at the things that the media asks them. They're getting arrogant. They're getting, upset. You see nobody with a such face with any question that asks on this opposition press conference. Big up to the WPA press conference. Big up to the PNCR press conference. Big up to the ANC press conference. Yo, fellas, this so-called press conference can't even match quarter of your press conference. And listen to what y'all speaking about. The upliftment of this country and things that happen in this country will need to be fixed. Will need to be put in a way that every Guyanese can inherit the wealth of this stinking rich country. You understand me? They'll see that opposition fighting for make this country be a better place than over there right now. Guyanese, rally around the opposition. Listen to this press conference. Listen to the opposition leaders, them. The people that have everything that it takes to run this country. The people that are highly qualified. As I say and I say again, why be the ballot criminals only be down there, you don't got all of the rest of them unqualified and intelligent. They don't have what it takes to be in front of medias. They don't have it. There are some dunderheads. You understand me? But he played by, but I like what Mr. Jordan do with him. Mr. Jordan, thank you from the bottom of my heart for destroying this man. This man is a dunce. People didn't know that this man was a dunce. That's why this man always got bright people around me. And thank you for embarrassing me. You see, Mr. Jordan, all the years, we know that you used to write this man budget. But this man touched you and you never really you never really tried to embarrass you concerning it. But this man pressed a wrong button. This man know that you used to do these things for him. Why he tried to embarrass you? You should have never do that. I will show that this fella don't have no respect for African people. And I like what African people putting it out on them. We are some very intelligent people, and that's what the PPP don't want to have wrong them. They don't want intelligent people wrong. They want dumb their people just like them. What are they doing to the school today? The schools in this country. What are they doing? They're corrupting the whole education system. That's what they want shit done the heads, so that you wouldn't understand what they're doing and what they're saying. And your Guyanese, Moody, that can Moody will come from India. That can Moody come from India, as I say and saying again. India, they have people in the slums, people shitting here, shitting there, shitting everywhere in India. So don't only come to Guyana and big up yourself about the Indians, them doing well and what's up and what's not. He's saying that because you know this country has stinking wealth. A lot of wealth we country have. So he's talking that, forget some of the wealth he come, for put things in place to get away some of our patrimonies out of this country. So Guyanese, you'll have us someday. Big up yourself.
You know, sometimes I sit here and I smile. I'm amused at what impresses us. I'm being very serious. I don't care how much bright man, smart man, brilliant man sit down at opposition press conference versus one con man, thief man, lie man, cuss man. I don't care about that. I am concerned about where real power resides. And until we could move the power from the smart man, thief man, one man, lie man, dictatorship, I don't care how much we sit down at press conference and display our intellect. We got time for that. We got time for diplomacy. There's a time for that. And there's a time to do just what the man doing, lie and cuss and stuff. We talking about this man lying and cussing and so on and dunce and so. But the man got all of us against the rope. Or the political party which he's general secretary for, got all of us against the rope. It's a small minds discuss people, big minds discuss ideas. Let me start discussing ideas. How to get that monkey off our backs. This is what I want us to talk about. And it's certainly going to happen by talking.
Good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. People got to stop blaming Mr. Norton. There are other MPs, opposition MPs in Parliament. You're just seeing a few. You're not seeing the ones that, was running for the head of the PNCR. They're hibernating. People got to realize that this current PPP government is not interested in the majority of Afro-Guyanese and
all right, everybody.
And some of the Indo-Guyanese and the Amerindians who are not in their party. Now they've been taking the black people lands, and now they're going to Congress, to Parliament, to take the people land and not to compensate them. Why are they doing it to Indians who have a lot of lands? Why aren't they doing to Indians that have a lot of lands, possess a lot of lands? I don't know. Our people have to unite and stop fighting. The opposition should stop fighting. Some of the opposition, not all of them. Some of the people in the opposition should stop fighting and unite. That is the only way they could succeed in getting rid of this corrupt, thieving government. Wake up, Guyanese. Wake up, suffering Guyanese. Those who are suffering and are not getting all the thieving money from the natural resources. Wake up.
Good morning, Kajaki. There's something going on with the parking and some small business people in Guyana. There are some people who shifted some stuff with the parking since September and have not received their stuff as yet. And they told me that they have proof that there are people who ship stuff after them, and this stuff arrived in Guyana already.
I want to believe them because the parking is facilitating the big businessmen in Guyana and in Regent Street. And the parking is trying to let those business people catch the Christmas and all of this money that's paid out. And willfully leaving those small business people behind. Okay? So I want to, if you can put some light on that. Last thing they told the guy that I know that his stuff would be in the country the 15th of November. Then he said it went to the 30th, then the 17th, then he told me today, now they said the 19th. Then when it comes the 19th, you have to wait 7 to 10 working days, then you gone overboard, Christmas pass. You understand? And not only him, a lot of small business people, they're telling me what is going on, what is happening to them in Guyana here. But you must remember that Guyana is controlled by a few people, you know, not only JADIO, it's controlled by the parking, the big shipping company, by the travel agent, by those people in the Regent Street and Rob Street. Those people are controlled and have their hands seriously, and they can determine what to do, who things to bring in, which container to open, not to open, and all these things. So I don't know if you heard about it, and this stagnation and this willfully, as they told me, willful act of the parking. Thank you. Bye.
I've not heard of it, but money run things. Money run things. That's all I will say. People have to understand that there are alternatives. People have to understand that there are alternatives. Listen, yesterday somebody asked me to pick up an item for them that they had purchased from a particular store. And I went in there, and when I believe I spent too long waiting for the item because they had no system, I went to the proprietors, I make a set of nice, and I tell them, give me back the money if they can't give me the item. What's my right to do because it's not my item? Then I buy it, but it's my time. And so if you're shipping with a company that is proving to you that they're unreliable or they are unscrupulous, they're unprincipled, I hear the Airlines use this term on his program ever so frequent. I'm going to use it because it is more decent than the term I just thought of. Me not make water, carry me lap 2 times. Old people, long time people go with their grandmother and so and so, go no one lap. And so you're not going to allow water for carry lap 2 times. They got another saying to that, one time something not done something. And so if you get abused one time, you ought to learn from that experience. And don't let it happen next time. Seek alternatives. And some people believe that they have to experience it to react to it. So no, everybody complain about the parking bad, but I just get good service on the parking. If everybody of a certain kind decide that we don't believe this company is being fair with us, decide to hold back the business, you're going to see a difference. You'll see a difference. As in, every year is Christmas. But the company still has to survive 365 days in a year. Realize that around this peak season, they are discriminating you, the small shippers, for the bigger shippers. Then, when it's not peak season, when it's down season, you discriminate them for the people who ship for you in these in the peak season. There's so many things that can change in this country in relation to how people do business if we will only take a stance together. If we could only take a stand together. Banks, the IH, the disrespect its customers, the abuse, the poor treatment, 30 days of boycott will bring banks their its senses. If you are alleging that La Parcan is mistreating its clients, boycott will bring them to their senses. Boycott does bring anybody to the sense. You guys hit them with the pocket hurts. I remember I have a PMB with La Parcan. I've been shipping with La Parcan for years. And I remember a year I had some stuff to be shipped by sea. And they sent it by air. And then telling me how much money I had to pay for it. I said, who paid for it? My instruction is that this thing was to be shipped by sea. If it was shipped by sea, it would have come 3 weeks from now. I said, if you don't want to pay for it, we're going to keep it for 3 weeks. And then you could come and collect it. I said, well, if you choose to keep it for 3 weeks, then you're going to look for another customer. And you're going to hear about it in the public. Tom called, Joan called, they called Harry. But at the end of the day, it was delivered to me at the ocean rate. Y'all like shut y'all damn mouth too much. It's as simple as that. Y'all like shut y'all damn mouth too much. And something just came to mind which I'm going to share with you. When courts had maybe the first Black Friday sale, and they couldn't deliver certain items together, the LGBT community came out in support of one of their own and they stand up in front of courts and they protest. Y'all remember that? Only the LGBT people got down. I just encourage too much nonsense. Anyhow, I love y'all same way. The Cash App is there and the Zelle is there. Y'all decide what y'all gonna do with it. Last week you all were quite unkind to me. Have a good day. Much love. Bye-bye. Goodbye, y'all.